What happens when a man who's used to commanding silence meets a woman who refuses to bow? It began in a courtroom, a place meant for justice, not humiliation. The fluorescent lights flickered above as whispers filled the air. On one side, a woman stood tall, calm, composed, her eyes steady like she'd seen storms before. On the other, a police officer, uniform gleaming, badge catching the light, his pride bruised by the thought of being challenged in front of everyone. No one could have guessed what would happen next. When he stepped closer, too close, anger simmered beneath his authority. A moment later, his hand moved. A sharp crack echoed through the courtroom. Gasps followed. A woman had just been slapped by a man sworn to protect her. But before the shock could settle, something shifted. Her calm turned to precision. Not rage, not panic, just control. In one fluid motion, she caught his arm, pivoted her body, and the next sound was heavier, louder. The thud of a man hitting the ground. And in that instant, everyone learned that respect isn't demanded by a badge, it's earned by character. The day had started like any other, gray skies pressing low over the city, drizzle streaking down courthouse windows, washing the world in silver and silence. Inside, the hum of fluorescent lights filled the courtroom, an almost sterile calm that made every sound. A cough, a footstep, a shifting chair, echo like thunder. The benches were half full, a mix of weary faces and restless eyes. Lawyers whispered over crumpled notes, while the bailiff stood near the door like a statue, eyes fixed ahead. It was one of those mornings when time felt slower, heavier, as if the air itself knew something was about to go wrong. She sat alone at the defense table, a black woman in her late 30s, dressed neatly in muted tones, hands folded in her lap. Her expression was unreadable, but there was something in her stillness, not fear, not defiance, something deeper. Like a person who's learned that silence can speak louder than anger. Across from her, the officer shifted in his seat. His jaw was tight, his uniform spotless, every crease in place. The kind of man who measured his worth by the shine of his badge and the weight of his authority. To him, this courtroom wasn't about truth, it was about control. Outside, thunder rolled softly, almost in warning. The scent of rain drifted through the open window, mingling with the paper and polish of the courtroom. The judge hadn't entered yet, but tension already owned the room. It wasn't spoken, but everyone felt it. The electric charge before a storm. In that quiet, the woman looked up for the first time. Her eyes met his, not with hostility, but calm certainty. And in that gaze, something flickered, the faintest shadow of what was coming. No one moved. No one breathed. Because sometimes, the most dangerous moments are born not from chaos, but from silence that waits too long to break. The door creaked open, breaking the silence. Officer Raymond Cole stepped inside, his boots clicking sharply against the polished marble floor. Every movement of his carried intent, practiced, precise, almost rehearsed. The kind of man who'd spent years in uniform and longer believing it made him untouchable. His face was hard, jaw set, eyes scanning the room like a predator who already knew the outcome. Cole wasn't tall, but he carried himself like he filled the space. His uniform was flawless, not a wrinkle, not a smudge, the polished badge catching the weak courtroom light. When he spoke to the clerk, his voice was low but edged, like every word demanded obedience. It wasn't what he said that unsettled people. It was how sure he was that no one would question him. Then there was her, Maya Reynolds. She didn't rise when he entered, didn't shift or flinch. She simply turned her head, meeting his gaze like she'd been expecting him all along. Her calmness wasn't weakness, it was control, carved from years of learning when to speak and when silence could cut deeper. Her hands rested lightly on the table, fingers steady. The faintest hint of discipline marked her, not military, not trained, but something in the way she carried herself. Like someone who'd learned to endure, to survive. Cole's eyes lingered on her longer than necessary, that faint smirk curling the edge of his mouth. To him, she wasn't an equal. She was a statement to be silenced, an example to be made. And that arrogance, that quiet, burning superiority, was what made the air between them electric. A man at the back coughed nervously. The judge's assistant shuffled papers. Every small movement felt louder than it should. When the bailiff moved closer, Maya's attention flicked briefly toward him, then back to Cole. It wasn't fear. It was reading the room, calculating. You could see it in her eyes, the way people who've been cornered too often learn to map their exits. Cole took another step forward. "Maya Reynolds," he said, voice dripping with practiced authority. "Still think rules don't apply to you?" She didn't respond. Not right away. She let the silence stretch, long enough for everyone to feel the shift in balance. Then, softly, she spoke. "I think justice shouldn't have favorites." That single sentence, calm, unshaken, was enough to wipe the smirk from his face. And just like that, without a touch, without a move, Maya had already won the first round. The courtroom clock ticked in the background, each second sounding louder than the last. The judge still hadn't entered, and that empty chair at the bench felt like an open invitation for pride to take the floor. Officer Cole stood just a few feet from Maya, his voice low, but sharp enough to cut through the hum of the room. "You think you can talk back to a cop and walk away clean?" he said, that smug half-grin returning, the kind that always came before something ugly. Maya didn't look up right away. She let him fill the silence with his own arrogance. Her hand brushed the table lightly, fingertips tracing the grain of the wood, grounding herself, keeping calm. When she finally spoke, her tone was even. "I didn't talk back," she said. "I told the truth. Maybe that's what you heard." The room went still again. Even the bailiff shifted his stance, unsure whether to intervene or pretend nothing was happening. Cole took another step, boots echoing in the hollow space between them. "You've got a smart mouth," he muttered. "That won't help you here." Maya slowly raised her head. "Then maybe you should listen with smarter ears." It was quiet, dangerously quiet. Cole's jaw clenched. You could almost hear the tension crack in the air, that invisible thread stretched to its limit. He looked around, noticed the eyes watching, and that only made it worse. Pride and authority, the two things he couldn't lose, not in public. He leaned closer, voice low and venomous. "You think that attitude makes you strong? It makes you stupid." Maya's eyes didn't waver. Her voice was calm, nearly a whisper. "No. It makes me free." And that was the spark. The officer's hand moved before his mind could stop it. A blur of motion, a snap of sound. The slap cracked through the courtroom like a gunshot. Paper fluttered from a nearby desk. A woman in the back gasped. For a second, no one breathed. Cole stood over her, chest heaving, eyes wild, half expecting her to crumble, to break, to play the part he'd written for her. But Maya didn't move. She just blinked once, slowly. Then she turned her head back toward him, her expression unreadable. Not hurt, not angry. Just steady. Something in her shifted then. The calm before the storm hardened into quiet resolve. Her chair slid back with a slow scrape against the floor as she rose to her feet. Every eye in the room followed her. Even Cole took an involuntary step back, confused by the silence that met his violence. Maya took a breath, deep, deliberate. Then, in one fluid motion that seemed to defy time itself, she caught his arm, pivoted, and the next sound wasn't a slap, it was a thud. A heavy, echoing thud that silenced everything else. And in that instant, amid the stunned gasps and frozen faces, Justice finally spoke, without saying a word. The sound of his body hitting the floor didn't just echo, it lingered. Like the room itself was trying to process what had just happened. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Papers hung midair, breaths caught mid-chest. The mighty officer Raymond Cole, a man known for breaking spirits before breaking sweat, was on his back, staring up at the ceiling in shock. Maya didn't gloat. She didn't even step forward. She simply stood there, composed, her chest rising slowly with each breath. Calm. Controlled. Everything he wasn't. Cole scrambled to his elbows, the scrape of his badge against the floor cutting through the silence. His pride had been hit harder than his body, and that made him dangerous. "You," he started, voice trembling with rage and disbelief. You just assaulted a police officer. Maya's reply came steady, unwavering. No. I defended myself. The bailiff hesitated, caught between duty and conscience. He'd seen the slap. So had everyone else. Yet years of conditioning froze him in place. The uniform still meant something heavy, something untouchable. Cole pushed himself to his feet, every motion clumsy with anger. His hand twitched near his belt, not toward a weapon, but toward power. The kind that came from authority, from intimidation, from a lifetime of people stepping back when he stepped forward. But Maya didn't move. Her gaze locked with his, and in that stillness, something subtle shifted, not in her, but in him. That small, burning certainty that had always guided him, the idea that the badge made him right, began to flicker. You think this is strength? He spat, dusting off his sleeve. You think anyone's gonna believe your version of this? Maya tilted her head slightly. People saw what they saw. Cole laughed, short, bitter, defensive. People see what they're told to see. And for a second, everyone felt the weight of that truth. The courtroom wasn't a room anymore. It was a mirror. Every face reflected a piece of what society had allowed. Authority mistaken for integrity, silence mistaken for respect. Maya took a slow step forward. Her voice softened, but it carried. You wear that badge like it makes you untouchable. But you forgot what it's supposed to mean. Cole's mouth opened, then closed again. His breath came faster. For the first time, his authority didn't shield him, it exposed him. Around them, murmurs began to ripple, quiet, uncertain. Someone whispered, she didn't do anything wrong. Another voice followed, he hit her first. And just like that, the narrative he'd controlled for years began to crumble. Cole's face flushed. You don't talk to me like that, he hissed. Maya's reply was quiet, deliberate. Then maybe someone should have. A simple sentence, but it cracked the air open like lightning. The bailiff finally stepped forward. Officer Cole, he said carefully, I think you need to stand down. Cole turned sharply. You don't tell me what to do. Enough. The judge's voice boomed from the hallway entrance. The room froze. Judge Morrison, a man known for measured calm, stood framed in the doorway, robes trailing, expression unreadable. I heard the slap, he said, eyes fixed on Cole. And I saw what followed. Cole's bravado wilted. His mouth opened, but no words came. The authority he wielded seconds ago was gone, stripped bare under the weight of witnesses and truth. Maya lowered her eyes slightly, not out of submission, but out of grace. The kind that comes from knowing when victory isn't about domination, it's about dignity. The judge's tone softened as he turned to her. Miss Reynolds, are you all right? She nodded once. I am now. Cole stood rigid, the silence around him heavier than handcuffs. For the first time, his badge looked small, a piece of metal that couldn't protect him from accountability. The judge gestured to the bailiff. Escort Officer Cole to chambers. I'll handle this personally. The officer hesitated, disbelief flickering across his face. Sir, you can't. Now. The word landed like a verdict. As the bailiff guided him toward the door, Cole's eyes darted back to Maya. But whatever he was looking for, fear, apology, weakness, it wasn't there. Only calm. Only truth. When the doors finally closed behind him, the room exhaled. Maya sat down slowly, folding her hands once more. Her breathing was steady, her eyes distant. She didn't look triumphant. She looked resolved. Because in that courtroom, it wasn't about who was stronger. It was about who stayed human. And sometimes, the most powerful victory isn't the one that makes noise. It's the one that restores silence. The door shut behind Officer Cole with a heavy click, and for the first time since morning, the courtroom felt still. The air that had once trembled with tension now settled into a fragile quiet. Not peace, but the space after impact. Maya sat motionless, her eyes resting on the empty doorway. Around her, people exchanged glances, whispering not about the fight, but about what they had seen. Truth, unfiltered, undeniable. And in that quiet, something subtle began to change, not just in the room, but in the people within it. The bailiff, who had stood frozen before, approached her slowly. I should have stepped in sooner, he said, voice low, guilt softening his tone. Maya looked up at him, her expression gentle. You did what you were taught, she replied. Now you know what's right. Those words carried more weight than a shout ever could. They weren't meant to shame. They were meant to awaken. From the judge's bench, papers rustled softly as Judge Morrison leaned forward, studying her. Ms. Reynolds, he said, I've presided over hundreds of cases, but I can't recall the last time silence spoke so loudly. Maya offered a faint smile, tired, but certain. Silence isn't weakness, Your Honor. It's just waiting for someone to finally listen. And there it was, the moment everything shifted. The badge, the rank, the noise, all the false symbols of strength, fell quiet beneath something real. Integrity, grace, control. Maya hadn't won because she fought harder. She'd won because she never became what tried to break her. As the murmurs grew into quiet respect, her eyes lifted once more to the judge, then to the gallery. She didn't need applause. She didn't need validation. Because sometimes, true justice doesn't come from verdicts or headlines. It comes from a single act of calm defiance that reminds the world. That dignity, once reclaimed, can't be taken again. By the time the storm outside had quieted, the courtroom had changed. Not in structure, the same worn benches, the same echo of footsteps, but in spirit. Something unseen had shifted, like a window had been opened in a place that had forgotten what fresh air felt like. Officer Cole sat alone in a side chamber, wrists unbound but reputation shackled. The once proud gleam of his badge now rested on the judge's desk, not confiscated, but surrendered. He didn't fight it. He didn't speak. He just stared at it, the same way a man stares at the past he can't undo. Across the hall, Maya waited quietly near the courthouse exit. The world outside was washed clean by rain, sunlight breaking gently through clouds. Her reflection shimmered faintly in the glass doors, not triumphant, not broken, just real. Reporters had begun to gather, whispers already spinning stories, but Maya didn't stop for attention. She wasn't the headline she wanted the world to see. She was the reminder it needed to remember. Inside, Judge Morrison dictated his statement. His tone was calm, deliberate, and final. Effective immediately, Officer Raymond Cole is suspended pending full investigation. The court recognizes the defendant's action as self-defense. The words echoed like the sound of balance being restored. Not vengeance, justice. Cole didn't look up, but a quiet tremor passed through him. For the first time, the power he'd used to command fear had turned inward. Accountability, the one authority he could never outrun, had found him. The bailiff escorted Maya's papers back to her. You can go home now, he said softly. You did nothing wrong. Maya nodded, taking them gently. I just didn't let it stay wrong. She stepped outside into the soft rain, her footsteps slow, measured. The city moved around her, unaware that somewhere, in one silent courtroom, the weight of silence had finally been broken. Behind her, through the courthouse window, the judge's clerk switched off the lights. The same room that had witnessed arrogance, fear, and violence now stood empty, but not hollow. It had learned something. As Maya walked down the courthouse steps, a young woman across the street lifted her phone. Not to record, but to lower it again, eyes filled with quiet awe. Sometimes witnessing truth is enough. Maya paused, took a breath, and looked back once, not at the building, but at everything it represented. Then she turned toward the light breaking through the clouds. Because justice isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's a whisper carried by rain. A story retold in silence. A reminder that strength doesn't come from striking back, but from standing tall when the world expects you to fall. And in that quiet victory, the city exhaled. A little fairer, a little braver. Because one woman refused to bow. In the end, it wasn't the badge, the uniform, or the courtroom walls that defined the moment. It was the choice to remain calm when chaos demanded reaction, to meet arrogance with integrity, and to reclaim power not through force, but through quiet strength. Authority without accountability is hollow. Pride without humility is fragile. And violence, no matter how justified by title or rank, cannot overcome truth. Maya's act wasn't about defeating a man, it was about affirming what justice truly means. That dignity can't be slapped away, that respect is earned, and that courage often whispers while fear shouts. In a world where many are silenced by power, her story reminds us. The most profound victories aren't the ones that make headlines. They are the ones that restore balance, demand reflection, and leave a lasting imprint on conscience. Authority without empathy isn't leadership, it's fear in uniform. And strength without integrity isn't power, it's emptiness. Sometimes, all it takes is one person, standing unshaken, to show the world the difference.